You're listening to the Who is Christine Anyway podcast season 2. Today's special guest is author, educator, and generally really nice guy, Tom Guzzio. Enjoy. All right, so I know we were just talking a bunch about this. I don't write notes, which I know that's the worst thing to say for your English teacher from my school. I don't write notes. Surprise! Mr. Guzzio, everyone's been waiting to hear from you, believe it or not. Because I talk about you in a lot of stories. I still call you Mr. Guzzio too, not Tom, because that's weird.
Which is very strange now, because I actually work in a building now where all of the students get to call me by my first name.
On purpose?
Yes. Yeah. So my journey has taken me to a therapeutic high school.
Oh.
And, I have about 23 kids who are trying to figure out how to do school because they have other problems that are bigger than school. And one of the ways that we kind of break down those barriers so they feel comfortable is they don't have to call me Mr. Guzzio, which I actually kind of like. Like I'm okay with being Tom. I still catch myself, because you know me, I would often slip into third person.
Mm-hmm.
I still catch myself saying Mr. Guzzio because I've only been there for a year, but so yeah, old habits die hard. But
that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's kind of a good thing though, because in a weird way, I don't know. It's like when they do like complete submersion into a language and you just learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that third person, kind of reaffirms that we're not nuts. I'm like, oh, well, I refer to myself as like, way to go, Christine, like that kind of thing. So I could understand that being beneficial.
It could be.
But that's gotta be weird sometimes. But
the referring to myself in the third person or having students call me by my first name?
Both.
Oh. Well, I think referring to myself in the third person would be strange if I started responding to myself in the first person. Like if I start having conversations with myself, then it's probably time to, up the meds before RFK Jr. takes them all away.
Weren't we just talking about PTSD? We can just chalk it all back to those roots. Like it was not me that did that to you.
Yeah. Oh, no. No, teaching. So teaching is not hard. In the sense, let me rephrase that. It is hard. It's challenging if you want to do it well, but I've never not enjoyed it for the most part. There's 1 year when I first moved to Massachusetts, where I was working at a charter school, and that almost made me quit teaching. And there's been a couple other times where I haven't particularly liked my role, but I've always liked working with the kids. And that's always been the fun part. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm at this current position, they encourage my craziness, which is nice. They accept it.
Yeah. And that's, so like I said before, you're the teacher I often refer back to as the one that really kind of, I'm like, this isn't an attack on me personally. Like education is not an attack. It's not an indoctrination. Yeah. It's an exploration. And that's what I think really deducing that from everything is I'm like, oh, wow, this isn't a form of like forced understanding. It was not like a, color in these lines kind of thing. And I think that, there's several assignments you did that really stick out in my head, but you did one where you had us do character development on The Simpsons. And that lives rent-free in my head because like all the way since I was like little, with my grandmother, it was always we could watch The Simpsons at 4. So I was like, oh, finally my time has arrived. And I was just so ready to do this assignment. Like I was just like, I was in. And I didn't do shit for assignments. So I was ready to do this one though. Like
see, I remember having to justify that assignment to the powers that be because I was showing a popular culture video.
I remember you talking about that, but not like directly to students as students. I didn't hear about that. You were very good and very professional about not bringing that to the student's desk, for lack of a better term. It was down the line when I was like, and I think I told you when we sat for lunch, like, I don't even know, 10 years ago. And I said, I'm like, that still sits rent free. It's one of my favorites. And you had said, it wasn't exactly their agreed upon blessing of tenure type teaching.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so disappointing because it was just as plain as the nose on your face. And it really broke it down to a way where it was like, okay, now explain to me how eat my shorts is like, it's just like, you're right. It kind of just made it easier.
Well, I also think that I don't want to say I was like ahead of the curve or anything, but like, this was pre-internet. This was, well, the internet was there, but it was, oh, I'm going to load this picture and I'm going to go make a sandwich and, exercise for a half an hour and maybe the picture will be loaded by the time I'm done.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean, teenagers have been consuming popular culture since the late 40s, early 50s. You're at least I'm saying you're like you're still a teenager.
No, I mean I get it, but I'm still educatable, and that's the thing is like I can still learn, and that's I don't want to say I never grew out of that teenager phase, but it's more along the lines of like the receptiveness of it. I never grew out of understanding the receptiveness of it, and in a previous episode actually, it was an interesting conversation because I was breaking down outside of the recording. I was breaking down the Super Bowl and, the symbolism. I'm like, you can even go to this. And I'm like, the way the stage was set. And if you follow the codes on the exact PlayStation remote, it's infinite life. Did you know that? Like, but it triggered critical thinking that most people wouldn't have had. And I think that even that assignment, and it was ahead of the curve. You really were ahead of the curve in the sense that you almost spoke, I don't say spoke our language, but you really did. And it kind of made us start questioning like, okay, cool. Well, Snowball the cat is there. Snowball 7 or Snowball, whatever season we were on. Snowball is there, but what's the difference between Snowball's, we're watching the Halloween special. What's the difference between Snowball's actions here and not, and you're just kind of like, okay. And it really kind of amasses more critical thinking. And now people, they call it conspiracy theorists now. They're like, well, they're predicting the future. And I'm like, or they're just, kind of using pens and drawing lines off things that could happen. Or maybe not, who knows? But it was still one of those things where it really did invoke critical thinking beyond just like, okay, it's not just a yellow figure. It's not just a cat. What is this?
Well, I always saw popular culture as an in. It was a way that I could get you guys to see, and I still use it with my students today. It was a way that I can get you guys to do the kind of thinking I was wanting you to do without having to give brain space to a text that you didn't understand. And then once you got the concept down, you were probably ready to tackle that more challenging text. So I have kids now who again, have bigger problems than doing school, but like I just taught them symbolism using Pixar shorts, and now it's like everybody's all about that. But like I tried to pair Pleasantville with To Kill a Mockingbird, and I actually did it at Saranac Lake, but like I know that there were people that did not appreciate that. I know that there were people who were like. And like I would bring in, I started showing the DVD commentary for To Kill a Mockingbird to give people insights into the characters, and it was just, to me, it just made sense because, we speak as a society now more than ever. We speak visually. And it was very much not in vogue at Saranac Lake at the time. Like I remember butting heads with people because like when I was teaching English 12, the first thing they wanted me to do was college essays. And I was like, but that should be done. A, not everybody's going to go to college, but B, that should be done the end of your junior year.
Just
no,
like
this way we've always done it.
So my eldest now, not to make you feel any older, like, so be kind to me here. My eldest graduates this year.
Hmm.
I'm so sorry.
It's
And
okay.
they do the Common App now.
Hmm.
I'm like, we had to write a different essay for every college if you were going to do college. Now, that was something they told you. They're like, they're not going to take your shit. You know, they like berate it into your head. But of course, this is early 2000s. And she did the Common App and everything else. And she got it. She's going for aerospace engineering, if that doesn't blow your mind.
It's awesome.
But it's, you know, but it's kind of funny where it's like, you know, when you look at my personal family as a whole, the tree, the structure, and we talk about those types of things, you know, you talk about trying to teach kids to learn to like the ideology of learning and understanding it's not an attack. And I really think you're perfect for that role. And I really do. And it's interesting because even now that I'm oddly teaching stuff and doing writing and all these weird things, which is probably not something you had in your peripherals at the time. I sit back and I go, you know, everybody talks about the generation that, I won't say the generation that failed, but the problematic generation, the questionable, the issue, the drug laden, the arrests, da da da. Everybody talks about, oh, they're the generation that, you know, this is the generation of that is better. Like they're just not under that same thing. So in this situation, you'd have this past, and then you have like my kid's in aerospace and, you know, going to aerospace. So she's not, that is not the same as Franklin County Jail. And same writing exercises, different types.
Right.
We're still writing letters, just different content. That's all. And but nobody talks about the clock in between, what it takes to prevent that. I don't want to call it septic sewage because it is formative to the person that's in the center, and it is formative to the generations below because they have to watch that highlight reel, those behind the scenes that you're talking about. Like the To Kill a Mockingbird is the clock of the person in the middle, and they have to see the behind the scenes of what that person has gone through to really kind of process what they've gone through to be able to move on through life and understand that traumatic things have happened, acknowledge that that has happened to their, you know, their parent, their sister, their brother, however, and understanding that. So it's kind of funny. It's that weird understanding that those extras are attached to those DVDs for a reason. They're for a reason.
Well, who doesn't want a chance to get into the head of the creator? And I'm not talking about creator in a broader sense. I'm talking about you know the artist who wrote and made that movie, or any movie for that matter. Like it's a wonderful opportunity to figure out their thought processes and maybe steal a little something from it. You know, and from a teaching standpoint, it was also good to gain an actor or an actresses. I'm thinking in this case the woman who played Mayella Ewell, to gain her insight into the character and to see, you know, and to let a student figure out if her thinking and her take on the character and the character's motivation maybe lined up with theirs. I mean, it was too good not to pass up. But yeah, now I'm kind of spoiled with that kind of stuff because you know, my biggest problem now is I can't get everything to stream the way I want it to when I'm in front of my students. You know,
let alone a picture to develop down and you know, download on time.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, that was an interesting time because you know I was at the mercy of everybody who was there, because I was, you know, the last one in, low man on the totem pole.
Right. But you also, I think, had probably the best scores. I don't know statistically. I have not been able to access those files. Please don't sue me, world. But I really think that statistically, I think it was the Regents at that time. It was just kind of coming. I'm not quite sure the finals and stuff. You still had the highest scoring English class, if I remember correctly. And I remember this because there was a lot of us that were pissed off to see you leave because we were finally like, no, we want to learn. And then it's like, we don't care. And we're just like, yeah, of course you don't. There was mutiny. Don't think there wasn't mutiny in that lunchroom over this.
Well, I remember showing up for graduation, and that was kind of cool. I mean, I see it in my head as this sort of like movie moment where people are like, Guzzio, and people were clapping. It probably wasn't that, just probably just a few people who noticed or something. But um, yeah, I was there, like when you graduated,
There's quite a
and
few people that remember you very thoroughly. You'd be surprised, I think. And I think, I think I don't want to say I pull myself up from the bottom of the pile, but I know myself as an academically challenged in high school child. Not because I couldn't do it, it was because nobody understood what happens outside the classroom affects what happens inside the classroom. It's the same thing. It's the mind of an artist. It's the mind of a business. If your people are not taken care of externally, internally, they're not going to perform as well. And it was definitely like there was a lot of situations where you'd be like, do you have your homework or this or that? And it would just be one of those things where you would understand. Like you would just be like, nope, I got it. Like, or you would ask the question, what's wrong? Are you okay? What are you doing? Like, are you
yeah,
sleeping? Are you eating? You got food? In fact, I remember Mrs. Plum gave me an alarm clock because I was never on time in my senior year because I was like, I got kicked out the day after I turned 18. Like, it's December 12th. I'm on my own, and now I'm not waking up.
yeah. She was the one that hooked me. She was the one that hooked me up with graduation tickets. She
She's
was great.
retired now.
I know.
She was wonderful. Like Flo too, the lunch lady. Everybody loved Flo. Man, I could go for some of her corn chowder right about now.
Food that was pretty decent.
Yeah, I tell
It
my
wasn't
kids
bad
about
at all.
the sandwich bar, and my kids are like, "What do you mean sandwich bar?" And I'm like, "I mean, you get
Um,
some white bread and you can make it at home."
yeah, that was I don't know. It seems so long ago to me now. Um,
But is it weird to you though, especially now that you are well seasoned? Haha, see,
mhm.
so well seasoned in your education process, and I mean, you having gone through college and gone through a majority of life. No, that sounds really bad. You're not that old.
It's
We're
okay.
not putting you to pasture, but like having gone through a majority of your life educating people and everything
Hmm.
else, and now really being able to see I don't say the kickbacks, but like to have it return where it's like, wow, that person, like we were talking about this other students, you're like, I didn't foresee that, but if that person didn't have a love of English, they couldn't produce that. If that person didn't have a love of this, then that would have happened. And then they always all trace back to moments where they were in your class, where it was, I don't want to say a Whoopi
Yeah.
Goldberg moment, like, that relaxation. Like, what is that like for you as a teacher to have known that you've
So
really affected people?
so it's a lesson that I've learned that I try to pass on to other teachers or remind teachers who may have been doing it as long as I have when they're frustrated is you don't know in the moment the impact you're having on a kid, and sometimes a kid doesn't realize that until
Mm-hmm.
they're no longer in your life. Social media has been really good in that regard because I've had kids come find me and be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, you really made a difference," and I'm like, "Stop, stop."
I'm like
Um,
totally guilty and stalkery, but sure.
but it's rewarding, and
Mhm.
some of the kids who've reached out, I'm not going to name names or anything, but like in in different places, like I've had a kid who's been like, you failed me, you know that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'm like, really? Is that
Yeah,
how I
I don't
failed
think I
you?
passed a single quarter in your class.
but but it's just, what I I think that's part of the reason why I really enjoy doing it is, I think you have to be a bit of a narcissist if you want to be a good teacher. But I also think you have to enjoy um, and actually care, um, and love, but not in a creepy way, the students that you work with. And one of the things I told myself from the very get go, and I'm sure I've probably told you this more than once throughout the years, is I wasn't sure I wanted to be a teacher. I fell back in. I chose teaching because I didn't really know what else to do. And my wife at the time was like, "We go to a party, and you're always the one who's out back shooting hoops with the kids. Like, why don't you think about teaching?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I only had a few good teachers in my life, and I can count them on one hand. The rest were all kind of dicks." And they're like, "Well, just be." just be like that teacher then. And, you know, for me, it was my art teacher, Mr. Jensen. And probably not like me as a teacher, in terms of like, he was very serious, not much of a jokester, but very much like me in the fact that like I knew he cared about me. I knew he was interested in my life, and I knew he wanted to actually like teach me something about art. It wasn't just like, okay, we're gonna make shrinky dinks today. You know, he actually taught us color theory and stuff like that. And you know, I took every freaking art class I could from him. But when I started my journey into teaching, I was like, all right, I'm only going to do this if I like it, because I'm sure that there may have been teachers you had at Saranac Lake who you didn't necessarily agree with their teaching methods, or maybe didn't necessarily think they were for you, but you probably respected them as people because you could tell they were in it for the right reasons. You could tell they liked kids. Maybe they weren't, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a few through the years, like especially if I go like down through elementary and I go up and like I can think of a couple here and there. There's it's always like a sitcom. Like it sounds so silly, but I'm like, there's always a character for every like every role. There's a character. There's the inspirer. There's the what the fuck is he doing? The ooh, that one's creepy. The, you know, why the hell is that? The how'd he not get fired? You know, like the one that's always on the cusp of getting fired for the right reasons, but they just never get fired. And I'm like, how?
Because they know somebody, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But like kids know, I knew when I was a student, I knew who was there because they actually gave a crap, and I knew who was there because they peaked in high school and, you know, they were reliving their glory years.
You're intuitive.
Or the ones that maybe liked it at one point, but now they're too close to retirement to quit, even though they're miserable. I've always promised myself that if I ever got to the point where I did not like my job, I would leave it, because I didn't want to do a disservice to the kids. And there's been a few times when I've been close, but I've always, like when I've reached those moments where it was like, okay, I'm going to start looking for things outside of teaching, but I'll you know, the bulk of my experience, my education is in education. So I'll keep applying for those jobs too, because maybe it's just this position. And I've always landed someplace that's kind of made me fall in love with teaching again. So I think one of the things I'm most proudest. There you go, English teacher. One of the things I'm proudest of.
Let me write that down.
Yeah, don't edit that out. Leave that in there. People need to know it's okay to make mistakes.
Leave that in there. In fact, I'm gonna make like the volume just get louder just during that segment. Just
add some echo onto it. You know, make it sound like it that word is
like it'll like stutter and just be like proud over and over.
Most proudest.
And then it'll carry on.
Keep listening for the next part of this episode with Tom Guzzio. Visit www.whoischristineanyway.com for access to all the social media links and additional podcast episodes.